rise and shine, up and at 'em. It's a phenomenal new day. You're officially tuned into WHPS TV 33, and we are in our Virgin Islands studio. Oh, I just love it. Like, I needed to feel this tropical energy on today, and that's how I feel in our studios. I mean, that's what happens when you just have all the innovation and creativity that TV 33 offers you. So whether you are tuning in through TV 33 or Comcast 90 or Roku or Facebook Live or Smoke Signal, you're here this morning, and we appreciate it. And so thank you. I'm very excited. Everyone, if you didn't understand the energy that I had on yesterday, I was part of the squad. We had phenomenal squad goals yesterday with our phenomenal for lack of a better word, you know what they used to call them, the four horsewomen, the four of them, the squad that are pushing back on government as we know it. And I shared with us the comments, of course, that President Trump said that they need to go back to where they came from and fix what's going on there. Now, if indeed if I'm from Minnesota, I need to go back to Minnesota. If I'm from Georgia, I need to go back to Georgia. I mean, Trump, what do you mean? They need to go back because they were women of color. And if this whole fight is about what Israel looks like in the opinion, or just to be able to push back because you don't agree with the positioning of one person. And the truth of the matter is, I really wanted us to question why we believe what we believe, how we believe what we believe. And it starts off with just the image. Because you have four very unique women who present themselves in such a way that based on that, people create a bias on how they look. The conversation is that you're supposed to look a certain way to be a politician. You know, they did the studies back in the day. Remember those who were in this region when you had Kwame Malik Kilpatrick against Gil Hill. And so they slated them against each other. So this young, strong, strapping man, and then this more mature, smaller frame individual, and the image play had something to do with your psychology of who you believe would be the best to lead you, the perception of leadership. And as it pertains to America, what have they always presented to you? That a white man, a mature-looking white man with a suit and, you know, the strategic colors of corporate America, black, brown, very conservative. You don't see black, blue. You don't see any grays. You don't see any browns. When have you ever seen a president jump up there with a brown suit? And normally it's a black, blue, sometimes if they're special, a red tie. Because it's a look. You're supposed to have a cropped haircut Trump kind of dispelled all that if you have hair anymore, but whatever the case may be. And so then that was the perception, and that is what we bought into because that is what the image that you see all the time is what it should be, who you think it is, who they are. And they're the best to lead you as they go into foreign countries and talk to other individuals and in the round tables of the United Nations, because this is the look that displays America. Well, no, not so much. And so the young ladies, the squad, presented that, guess what? No. And I showed you the clip. And I really took offense to Gayle King. And I believe, we know she's Oprah's bestie and all of that. And I believe that she probably thinks she is reincarnating and channeling Oprah. I'd love to know if she actually has the conversations with her to shape her narrative as she attempts to have interviews and conversations with anyone. But I really didn't appreciate her positioning. Because if you recall in the clip, everyone, and if we need to see the clip again, we can. But if you recall in the clip, her whole position was, based on how they teach you to act. Well, you're supposed to be a freshman congressperson, and you're supposed to go in and be quiet, and you're supposed to learn and sit back and wait your turn. So heaven forbid you question Nancy Pelosi. Heaven forbid you have a voice that is very outspoken in opposition to what the party overall is suggesting, because then that shows dissension in the party. But we're talking about dissension in a party that really does not, and I'm saying it, does not address all the issues specific to people of color, other than the word of saying that you're a Democrat. I said it. We can have the question, we can go and we can debate all day long. And I'm not saying that the Republicans are any better with creating policy that's going to help us with our own vision. But at the end of the day, think about it. Out of all the issues, and they tried to, I think there were some hidden files and some other things that were brought out yesterday as well, something for Trump. Out of all of the horrific and negligent and questionable acts, and people say, he really didn't do anything to actually get impeached. Well, we know why they impeached Clinton. Now, what did that have to do with the Oval Office? But all these things that have happened under this watch, they say it's not enough to impeach him. Or the truth of the matter is that Nancy Pelosi has used that to increase her platform, to increase her marketability, to increase her perception of control. And so why would I remove you out of the way? Because all my conversations are that, guess what? I can. This is what I can do. We're gearing up, and but if you support me because I'm the speaker, then please don't think that it's about the position of the people, what is best for the people. It's not. And so then when you question these young ladies as to how if they are actually outwardly combating or questioning her leadership, then we have another woman of color say, well, shouldn't you have done it a certain way? And I love that the pushback was, no, maybe you should be asking a different question. Maybe the question should be, why are they not addressing what we're stating? Why are they not being open to what we're suggesting we need to make sure that our communities are whole? Because the truth of the matter is that they understand that they are there for the will of the people. They're not there to increase their purse strings. I mean, that's the truth of the matter. Because everyone else, you all remember a couple years ago, I brought in the documentation that shows what the wealth is of all the sitting Congress people. And there are congressional members that are millionaires, multimillionaires. And so you tell me what, especially if they didn't have that wealth entering into the political foray, then you tell me how did they then amass it? What does it look like? And then sadly enough, when we got down to our own emeritus, John Conyers, I think he was at $150,000. So clearly that showed that he did not use that office to line his own pockets. And so at the end of the day, I want us to revisit all of that and talk about biased. What is a biased? Because we're going to continue that conversation on this morning. And then we're going to get to, at the top of the hour, that 8 o'clock hour, El Chapo. I kind of hinted at it yesterday. I take offense. I have a problem with El Chapo, being captured and brought over to America. I just don't even understand how we then claimed rights to El Chapo. And then you put him, for all this time and 11-week trial or whatever the case may be, only to give him life in prison. And then you position it that, okay, he has a purse somewhere, like a bounty. Well, in the pirate terms, they call it a booty of $12.5 billion they assess. And so they're on a scavenger hunt. They're on a treasure hunt. You're trying to get his money. And so you say you lock him up and I'm going to get his money. I'm going to find his money. And you heard his defense attorneys, you'll hear them say, well, to this date, I don't know what they're talking about because where's the money at? And so America now is looking for his money. Is it all about the money? Is everything always about the money? Because then we'll juxtapose that to what OxyContin looks like in America. It is an American family that mass produced and made and created OxyContin that Pure Pharma has been producing. And their bounty is much more than El Chapo's. Why haven't we brought them to trial? You know how many people overdose on OxyContin, which then leads into fentanyl? We don't have those conversations. Oh, but then what we do is call it a disease, and then we implement our own war on drugs and then have money to say we want to go into treatment. But that same company, Pure Pharma, now provides something that is to help you either wean off of the drug, the clip will show it, or something as a remedy for the addiction. Isn't that the contradiction? So I'm going to provide you with the drug and I'm going to give you something that helps you. But guess what? It's all about the money because I control them both. My company controls them both. Why haven't we brought them to trial? Why haven't we charged them for the actual intent, cruel intent and punishment? Because it's a conscious act. You know what is in OxyContin. You know the addictive principles and components in that pill. And so they consistently produce it. Doctors consistently prescribe it. Addictions occur, and then mayhem happens. But you've never heard about them going to trial to secure their monies. Why? Because that's a big business in America. And I would venture to say it'd be very interesting to find out how many people actually have investments in that company. And so much so then that all that had to be approved by the FDA. Hello, that's federal. So you understood. So you all get where I'm going with this biased. So you have people who are actually speaking up against what this looks like because it really doesn't benefit the people. And I'm going to do everything I can to assassinate your character. So much so that there's a clip that we'll prepare to show where they're suggesting that if Trump, they're leading right into his conversation because he wants people to believe that this is the type of dissension that the Democratic Party will present in America if you elect these types of women into office. And so that's why you should stick with the Republicans. And so if indeed that's the case, they're playing right into his play. But the truth is, it's right into his play if you all believe it. All of this goes back to you having a realistic understanding and expectation of what you want for you, and then identifying with a candidate that best fits the conversation. And because of that, they'll understand, of course, the parameters of legislation. We know that that's where lobbying comes in. We know that's where big business comes in. And then they give the monies, and their goal is to have you then do what they say. That's the Geppetto to your Pinocchio. But at least you have an onus that says, this is what I actually chose and why I chose it, and the expectation of what you're going to do for me when I'm in office. When you're in office. Well, actually, I said it right. When I'm in office. Because all they're supposed to do is represent you. Do you get it? And I'm going to add that into a component. The Michigan Marijuana Advisory Group just issued a preliminary overview of what their social equity plan looks like. I get a little bit of it, and I'm not impressed at all. It's a biased. Because if I need help, if you know that I don't have access to the Capitol, you giving me a percentage discount makes no difference. I don't care if it was 25%. On Wednesday's show, I'm not going to infuse that into this conversation, but a couple of the factors that I'll give you 25% off here, 25% off here. If you qualify, there is a potential for you to be able to get 60% off. Well, guess what? If I'm still at $500,000, 60% of that puts me down to what? 200,000, 240. Stop. And that's supposed to help me? But then again, if you don't have anyone that's sitting on the advisor group that looks like the people in the 19 communities that you have identified that are of disadvantage, then because I promise you, everyone on that list, the 19 communities, there is not one representative on that board, that group, that is a representation of someone who comes from those communities. Don't you think that's ironic? Oh, but they didn't even think that you think about it. Because again, you're dealing with people who are not walking in your shoes, but they create policies in which you're supposed to be governed by. But how can I best tell you what works for you when I don't have that experience? I don't have the empathy for it. I've never had a inkling of what it looks like. There's nothing that identifies me in that space. And that's across the board. But I'm supposed to create policies and have conversations that make it better for you. It's no different. I told you all before, I have the pleasure of working for an amazing team and campaign coming up out of Baltimore. And we had the conversations all the time, specifically as it pertains to crime. So there were some reports on a daily basis that there were some 14 to 15 incidents that have happened in the city. Perhaps maybe half of those might at least have led to death. And so now the city has adopted this whole crime plan and under Trump's initiative, and they have monies that are coming in for technology. And of course, they say sensitivity training and a mental health piece. You can't look at someone and tell if they're suffering from mental health issues. So how does that work? So it sounds good. You say, oh yeah, okay, we're going to train them. I can't look at you and tell that you're suffering from mental health. But everyone, because that's the conversation and because you're not thinking through what's been presented to you, then you're letting someone that you believe that's in some authority dictate that this is what we're going to do to alleviate the crime in the community. That doesn't work, everyone. It doesn't work. There's an amazing study that Yale presented coming up out of Yale education, and some phenomenal psychologists that's talked about there's a mental component. There's a medical approach that needs to be taken to address crime, specifically in urban communities. Absolutely. We're all suffering from PTSD. I don't know why you all don't understand that. That is the reparation for black folk. Everyone who grew up, everyone, I believe every black person in America suffers from PTSD. And then there are, of course, different levels of it, different severities of it. But of course, in the research that they did, specific to young people growing up in urban communities, that the PTSD is more harmful in degrees of levels than someone who just came out of war. Did you get it? So you're walking around every day suffering from PTSD, whether the crime is inflicted directly upon you, the violence directly upon you, but merely being in that environment has created something inside of you that has caused you to suffer so much so that it is higher than our veterans who've gone over and fought in wars. And we thank you for your service. But the everyday war right here has an impact. And so then if you are not taught how to balance that, how to maneuver through that, try to understand the situations from which you are in and where you have come from, how then are you supposed to be a productive member of society? And then that's what they'll use to then incarcerate you. That's what then they'll use to inflict a far stronger support and stresses upon you and governance and policing upon you because of these actions. Come on. Think about that. That's the bias. And so that's where we're going to go with this today. I'm going to open this up with a clip. I'm going to share a video with Sean and see if he can pull it up for me. We're going to work on it. But let me just give you, first of all, the definition of bias, if you all didn't know that. So bias, as Merriam-Webster defines it as, one, a prejudice in favor of or against one thing, person, or group compared with another, usually in a way considered to be unfair. Quote, there was evidence of bias against foreign applicants. Some of the synonyms are prejudice, partiality, partisanship, favoritism, unfairness, one-sidedness. Another component, cause to feel or show inclination or prejudice for or against someone or something. Reader said the paper was biased towards the conservatives. So every day we live in these biased. And if you don't understand the bias that are being presented to us in all facets, it's everywhere. An amazing caller yesterday, I believe that was his first time calling in. He specifically noted about how he believes that men of Arab descent who come into the communities prey on black women and disrespect black women. And I told him he made a very valid point, and I wanted to stay right there because I didn't want to push that component into the conversation, but it's definitely fitting for where we are right now. We have a bias for them because as an outside looking in, we don't like and believe that they disrespect our women and they prey on our young girls, and maybe they flash their monies or what they have or the potential of their means to get attention, and then what we believe is exploiting these young women. But the truth of the matter, and Sean and I were discussing it, is that black men do the same thing. They do the same thing. So, and the gentleman was so eloquent in saying, well, we can't do that to their women. Absolutely not. Because they don't do that to their women. Did you think about that? You don't see any of their women out you don't see them in videos. You don't see none of that. Everything that people perpetuate in our culture, you don't see them. Do you get that? And so there's a bias in that. So we can treat our women any kind of way. They see us treating our women any kind of way. They emulate how we treat our women, and we don't think about how we treat our women. We don't think that that is an example for the world to see, that if you have them up here and you're hitting them on the backside and everything is sensationalized and you want them to look like a Barbie doll and something that is unreal, and you have all these other things, and the image of what we support in our communities as we see through video. And maybe the bigger issue is that because they control music and media, and then that's what is the conversation. I mean, wasn't there a dialogue that has been going on about Jermaine Dupri? He made a statement that, all these rappers nowadays, these women, only thing they rap about are their private parts. And so there was some clapback from Cardi B, and because she's like, well, not all women, but if that's all you all want to hear, if I talk about something else, you all don't play me on the radio. So my body parts is what gets you engaged and gets me spins, and that's what I'm going to talk about. But she went on to list some phenomenal women who are a lyricist who don't talk about that, but they don't get any play. And so if indeed that is what we perpetuate, and that's the look that we perpetuate, you tell me, and maybe this is my bias, you tell me how Cardi B looks. And I get it. She looks that way for her, and I'm just using her as an example, for her profession. So she came out of the world of entertainment, stripping, and now she's a artist. Okay. What else would she do with that look? And maybe I'm just quiet because I want you to think about it. I'm waiting for you to tell me. And so many young women, old women, women, period, are trying to look that way. You tell me, what type of job will you get when you look like that? What do you get? Tell me. And that's the image that we perpetuate. Everybody wants hair down to their behind. Everyone wants the enhanced breast job. Everyone wants the small waist. Everyone wants the immense posterior. Everyone wants the full lip. Everyone wants to look like this model, this doll, this whatever this is. Because the truth of the matter is, I mean, women of color are voluptuous in and of ourselves. We're not skinny. There's a thickness to us in a good way. Not all of us are blessed with that, but a lot of us you all remember back in the day, the Hottentot Venus. And they pulled her up and would put her on display in the circus because of her voluptuous shape. And of course, Caucasians had never seen anything like that. So they would put her on display. Isn't that interesting? So see historically where we're going? So you're talking about back in the 1600s, Hottentot Venus was out. And then today in 2019, we still perpetuate that same look. We still put our women on display. To whose entertainment? And then for those who might not look a certain way, I tell you all the time, when I was on the East Coast, wild natural hair, no problems. Hey, when I got back here, mature men told me, well, you need to straighten your hair. What do I need to straighten my hair for? Because you'll get a man. Men here don't like natural. Are you kidding me? We all came out of natural. What did your mama look like before I'm just like, but do you realize that? And so we've played into a bias of what we think is beautiful, a bias of what the image that we think that black women should look like. And then those who don't, you don't get any play. And you all know me, I will be the first. If I want to throw on some hair and I cut my nails, but that was just symbolic of my cannabis business, and I liked them long and the green and whatever, because you all know I didn't normally do and get my nails done. So, but that was my thing. That's my preference, but I own businesses. So in the space that I'm in, I'm creative enough to be able to, I can get suited and booted, or if I want to look, around the way, I can do it all. And there isn't anyone that can necessarily go up against me or put something against me or hinder my opportunity and access into a certain space, because I'm not going to punch someone's clock. There's a bias in that. And the bigger conversation maybe that I want us to get to is that we perpetuate that on each other. It's not even about what they do to us. I tell us all the time, is if I'm pointing the finger, it's the three that are coming back at us, because I want us to have that conversation. And so those are things I want to think about today. Let me open us up with this quote, and it's from Albert Einstein. Bias against the Negro is the worst disease from which the society of our nation suffers. Let me give that to you again. Bias against the Negro is the worst disease from which the society of our nation suffers. That's bias against us. You saw it yesterday. You see it in the forefront of what is happening in Congress. You see it every day when you have municipalities that are suffering, especially those that have majority people of color or poor people, socioeconomic conditions. That's a bias. And so that means that I innately, and that's why it's so important, I might have to go to a break, and so we can pull up this clip, because that's why you need to see this clip. Because the clip goes to show you famed psychologist Jennifer Eberhardt, black woman, wrote this book, Biased. And she talks about that so much of what we think about has been embedded in us that we're not even conscious of how we think and why we think the way that we think. And it impacts all aspects of our lives. So think about that. So if this quote unquote majorative group created this mindset in us based on who they see us as and who they want us to believe, and then we then indoctrinated that, and that's what we were taught growing up, that we're not even conscious of how we hold prejudices against each other. And we do it today. Light skin, dark skin, short hair, long hair, tall, short, skinny, voluptuous, educated, quote unquote, uneducated. What you drive versus where you live versus, come on. And we aren't even conscious of it. I mean, think about it. When I was growing up, the first little boy I liked, his name was Eric, and he lived around the block from us, and he was as dark as midnight. And I just thought he was the best thing in the world. And why you like that little black boy? He's black. And I'm like, well, what's wrong with that? Are you supposed to like the light-skinned boy? Says who? Isn't that no difference than men who, my brother, same complexion. He had a preference for women of darker skin, darker hue. He would get teased about that. Why you like the dark girl? And think about it. Now, what is the image? That when you're doing something, especially again, you perpetuate that into media and the videos, everybody light skin, long hair. She doesn't even have to be cute. She doesn't have to have appealing facial features. But as long as she's light skinned, and heaven forbid if her eyes are a different color, oh my gosh, then she's exotic. So you got light skin, different color, or heaven forbid if she's biracial or something like that. Oh, you done hit the jackpot now, doc. And long hair, and that is your trophy piece. That's your arm candy. Are you even conscious about what you even think of as beautiful? You got to think about that. It has an impact in all areas and aspects of our lives. And then if we're not aware and conscious of it, it has an immediate impact on how we raise our children. It's no different. There's an amazing clip. I'm on Sean this morning. In a minute, I'm going to ask him, he's going to get on the mic. Sean shared this clip. And it's this phenomenal little boy. And I don't know where he gets these clips from, but Sean had this clip. And it's an amazing little boy. And he's having a conversation with his mother. And they're at dinner. And I swear, if he's not, and Sean, I sent you this video. I'm going to see if we can do something with it. He's having a dinner. It looks like there's some place where it's like crabs and something like that. He has a plate, and clearly he's an old soul. He has to be. And so the mother's, I don't know how they got on the relationship of a little girl, and her name is Bianca. And the mother tells him, well, you don't have to look at her that. You don't have to think about her that way. And he was like, well, she's not the first. And she said, well, what? You're only 5 years old. And he was like, but that's my girl. We called her bro at first. He's like, that's my girl, bro. That's my girl. And he said, you don't understand, mama. That's on life. And she's telling him, no, you're 5 years old. You're too young to have to, worry about this little girl and the commitment to her. You wrong, mama. That's my girl. That's on life. That's on life. And he stood up to make his position. He said, that's on life, mama. And then he sat back down. She was like, look, in essence, I don't even want to hear this because whatever. He was like, you're tripping. And I had an appreciation. I don't know where that little boy got it from, but he had a consciousness at 5 years old to say, that little girl, I'm looking out for her. That little girl, if that's the relationship that I'm in and that's my girl, my responsibility is to look out for her and make sure she's okay. I appreciate that. Versus a conversation, oh yeah, did you tell little boys, oh that's so cute, he got 4 and 5 little girlfriends, oh that's nice, that's good, he's a little player. And we perpetuate that shenanigans. And then when he's dealing in spaces that aren't as responsible, and then he has 4 and 5 babies by each one of those little girls, then what? And then you tell the little girls that, oh, well, they're supposed to be this virtuous woman who can find, oh, here we go. I know I'm going someplace y'all really don't want me to go. Who can find a virtuous woman? And she's supposed to be so pure and she's supposed to be so innocent. And that's the kind of girl that you marry. And so then you have one set of girls who are just out there doing everything. And those are the ones that are getting attention, and those are the ones that are living their best life and all this other kind of stuff. Then you got the quote-unquote good girls who are sitting at home. They can't get a date, can't get a conversation because she's a good girl, and thinking that at some point the man is supposed to appreciate you. Well, after he done run through the group and been worn down and used up, now he's supposed to be your prize? How does that work? There's a bias in that. Do you think about that? Do you think about what you teach your sons versus what you teach and expect from your daughters? It's no different than how we're raising young men right now. People aren't pushing young men to go on into skilled trade or to higher education. Thank God for the young men that do. But if the majority of them aren't, and then the young girls are on the fast track to education and to becoming successful individuals through education, whatever their career is going to be, who do they have to choose from? And then, so what you've done is create this internal issue with defining themselves, the definition. So men, I'm the man. And then because you have this educational acumen, then there's a disconnect, because then it's internally, he's questioning if he's good enough for her, but then I want to be the man. So then I'm going to overexert what my position is. And then she has to acquiesce. You all have heard it in church. I've heard it. The pastor has given sermons and he's quoted and called out some people in the church to talk about, well, oh, so-and-so, she's a professional woman and her husband is a factory worker. But when she gets home, she gets in line and she allows him to lead. And she doesn't talk about her successes and all the stuff that she does because that makes her a good woman. Says who? Says your ego? Do you realize where these things come from? And so then she has to cow down her gifts. She has to control her gifts to appease an ego to keep peace. Where did that come from? Those are things that I want us to think about. So it's good enough that she's smart when you need her, but then she's too smart and it's too much for you. And maybe I'm just talking to myself, and maybe I'm just telling my own story, because that's probably what my experiences have been. So I'm smart enough when you need me to do stuff and to help you and to have all the answers and all that stuff. I'm great. And to help you fulfill your dreams and get you where you're going, and all that's wonderful. But then I'm too smart when I just don't listen to whatever you say just because you have you're a man and you have testosterone. And so then something's wrong with me, and I'm too assertive. Well, you can't have them both. So if you want me to just sit down and not know, then there's a price to pay for me sitting down not knowing. But I was talking to a young man yesterday, and I don't know if he calls himself trying to date me or whatever it is. And we were having a conversation. He was like, well, I mean, you're just so busy. Like, I was like, well, what do you want me to do? Am I just supposed to sit at home? Like, I'm supposed to be sitting here waiting for you? Like, what? And then it's always about what they want, what I want to see you, what I want to be a part of your life. Did I ask you? Did I ask you to be a part of my life? Did I ask you, did I say, oh, I want to see you? So do you realize what's wrong even in that? That it's always about what you want. You haven't presented anything that's going to make it beneficial for me to say that this is something that I want to engage in. Because you clearly understand and you see what you believe that I'm working with to bring to the table, whatever that is. Do you get that? And so maybe I need to start having a bias. I think I have, actually. I've finally gotten to the point where now I'm biased. I'm like, no. If you have not worked to get to where you need to be, because that's where you desire to be and your goals and aspirations and what it is that you're trying to accomplish, if you haven't put your foot forward to do those things for you, don't do it. Don't have a conversation with me. Don't do it. Because I'm not making anyone else. That's a whole made in America. Not doing it. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm out of that business. How's that? Not doing it anymore. So if you're somewhere and I can jump in and help you as you are actively dealing and growing your business and businesses and all that stuff, that's great. Your aspirations, your careers, that's great. But someone who is only, oh, I have a dream. Well, you don't even have a dream. Folks just make a dream for you and then put you in play, and then you forgot how you got there, and then you want to argue. That's what I had to tell one guy. I was like, do you realize I'm on your side? You fight so hard to try to prove me wrong, but I'm really on your side. So something's going on with you if you feel that you have to fight me. And in our communities, why do we do that? Who told us to play into that whole notion a woman is supposed to be seen and not heard? She's supposed to be sitting there waiting for you, the beck and call. Well, if you know the bias in America that aren't positioned to allow you to be successful as a black man, specifically in their world, the way that you would want to, there's a glass ceiling. You're only going to go so high in corporate America for the majority. Majority of us, you're going to need help and additional support to start and establish businesses. Not a problem. But if indeed you understand that, and then it's a partnership, but maybe that's where the problem comes again, is because we don't really understand what relationships are. Because maybe we haven't had those examples of what it looks like. And majority of us, instead of saying that this is what I didn't have, I'm going to work to create what I didn't have, we go back and do exactly and perpetuate all of those cancerous activities for what you didn't have until when you get to be an adult and you do the same thing. Or you're 10 times worse than that. So I'm asking us today, if we understand all of those things, A, how does society as a whole perpetuate that on us? And then I think, which is most detrimental, how we perpetuate those things and those inclinations against each other. And so that's where we're going today. So if we can, when we get there, we'll do that. We'll talk about that clip. And actually, it's a daily show. And the title is Tackling Perception's Effect on Behavior. So all of it is about our behavior. You look at how Trump felt against the squad. If you look at how now the government is looking at El Chapo. If you look at, the truth is, how the government is not looking at the Slayer family, the creators of Oxycontin. The truth is maybe how we're not even looking at how people of color really can thrive on the cannabis, and in the cannabis space. How we look at how we police each other, how we look at how we educate each other or don't. How we look at how we perpetuate the racism in America. That's where we are right now, biased. I don't even know if you've thought about it that way. I want you to. I want you to assess the spaces that you're in, even the biases of who we are, to make it better for us in our communities. And I'm going to say it. You all know this week coming up, the NAACP is having their big shindig convention here. A week long of all those things that they're going to do in the folly, and have people come in all across the country and have these panels and do these things and all of this stuff. And I'm not mad. I mean, I know that they have a model and a mantra and a mission, and perhaps they feel that they're doing it to the best of their ability. But I don't understand how that's really empowering our individual communities. Yeah, I said it. Those of you who are lifelong NAACP members, I need you all to tell me how the work from that group is benefiting the communities overall. I want to know why the NAACP wasn't one of the first to jump on social equity as it pertains to cannabis, to expunge the records of so many black and brown people across this nation who have been plagued by the stigma of having a felony attached to their name. You all saw the clip that you can't get student loans. In a lot of places, you still can't vote. You are hindered from getting adequate employment. So in this whole thing of making it better for each other, we work to emulate what the majority does when it's time for conference time and to have these conversations. But when does a conversation ever turn into action? And I'm not saying if they do have work programs and those things. I mean, the Detroit chapter is supposed to be the biggest chapter in the country, right? I'm a native Detroiter. So if I don't know what you're doing, I'm not saying that you're not doing it, but I just want to understand that's just an example. So when we have the platform to do more for each other, why don't we do that? Or do we feel that it's just enough that we can do for the people who pay the membership and then they show up? Is that no different like the church on Sunday? So there's a bias. I'm only going to give you the word if you come into the doors and you're going to tithe and offer. Then that is enough for me to give you the words that I have that are going to motivate you and emotionalize you to deal with whatever's happening in your life. Now, I don't know if that best adequately equips you when you get out of the doors of the church or the mosque or whatever it looks like, however you worship. But for that brief moment, you are in a space when then maybe I pray that you are in a space that you lend your spirit into a spatial experience in which you feel presence and you feel a connection and you're educated on the word, and whether it's the Bible or the Quran or whatever tool that you are using to understand the word based on what you believe, and you have the connection to a higher power. And then when you get out of that door, you're ready to tackle the world. Or perhaps just when you get out of the door, then you say, oh, service was great. And you were emotionalized and you say you felt the spirit and all those things, which you could do in those doors. But then when you walk out into the world, You're back to where you were before, trying to figure out how to pay your bills, trying to figure out how to put your kids through school, trying to figure out how to have affordable housing, trying to figure out how to have clean water, I'm trying to figure out, versus it being a resource and a tool. Because the truth of the matter is, a community is best when resources are there. Stronger policing doesn't make better communities. Better resources, more resources, and empowered citizens make better communities, which then hinder crime and violence. Do you think that people actually just want to go out there and risk their lives and die? Like, do you think that's just a conscious effort? No. It's the basic necessities that people are missing. Now, of course, folks might want more things. Like, oh, yeah, I might want more designer, da-da-da. Okay, you take the risk of that. But I believe that most people who put themselves in harm's way, specifically for things that are quote-unquote against the law, it's because of basic necessities. Food, shelter, clothing. The minimum wage, what does that do? If you have a history and actually a felony, absolutely, or a conviction, you already know that the barriers of entry to what that looks like. Come on, you all. Those are the bias I want us to think about. The clip is ready. We're going to go to it. This is The Daily Show. I love Trevor Noah. I really like him. And Jennifer Eberhardt. We're talking about her book, Biased. Let's take a look.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I have seen some of your interviews. I have read the book, and this is one of the most fascinating conversations that is being had in a completely new way. Let's talk about bias. What's interesting is many people think of bias as a way to say somebody's racist.
Right.
But off the bat, we've got to clear that off the table. Someone being biased is not someone necessarily being racist.
That's right. And I mean, all of us have a vulnerability to bias. And the book really looks at the science behind it.
Right.
And I think implicit bias can be defined as the beliefs and the feelings that we have about social groups that can affect our decision making and our behavior, even when we're unaware of it.
It's interesting because, most of us hear the term bias or implicit bias oftentimes when talking about police.
Right.
We'll hear that police have implicit biases. They will stop African-American people or minorities at a higher rate than the general population.
Right.
And that plays into the why. But how does bias affect somebody's ability to do their job as a police officer?
Well, it could affect, so in this country, there's an association between blackness and crime.
Right.
And that association could influence, the decisions that officers make and the actions they take, again, even without, knowing that it's affecting them.
You actually worked with Kamala Harris in implementing bias training.
Yes.
With police forces. How do you begin that? What do you say to somebody? Be like, now, when you see the black person, no. Whatever you're thinking, no. How do you teach someone to not be biased?
Sorry. So the idea is to. I'm sorry.
No, please.
So what you do is, you go in and you teach them what bias is, what implicit bias is, but you also teach them the conditions under which it's likely to be triggered. And so you want them to be mindful of those conditions in order to try to protect themselves from having that bias affect what they do.
Right. That was another amazing thing that I learned from the book, and that is bias may not be on the surface. It may be triggered by an event, by stress, by panic. So what you're saying is there may be an officer who's fine all the time. He doesn't see black people as a threat. But then when a situation becomes stressful, all of a sudden his bias kicks in.
It could.
It's like an allergy.
Right. Yeah. I hadn't thought about it that way before, but.
Well, you're a genius. I'm a comedian, so
So some situations where you're stressed, where you're threatened, where you have to think quickly, make decisions really fast. So all of those situations could trigger bias. It could make it more likely that you're going to act on that bias in some way.
Right.
And so, we as individuals, we could try to protect ourselves from bias by slowing it down, by relaxing, by, combating the conditions that we know are going to produce it. And you could do that also at the organizational level. So a police department could develop strategies and policies that don't put their officers in situations where they have to think fast and, where they're under threat and so forth.
Right,
and so
try and find ways to slow it down so that you are less, less at risk of your bias kicking in.
Right.
If we talk about bias as a police issue, it seems easy for everybody to understand.
Okay.
But one of the most powerful stories you write about is the story of bias in your family as it affected your son.
Yes.
And you tell the story of your 5-year-old son.
Yes.
And you're in a plane together, and he looks over and he sees a black man with dreadlocks, and he says, "That man looks like Daddy."
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And you go, "Oh, yeah, well, he doesn't look like Daddy, but why do you think that?" And he's like, "I don't know, he just reminds me of Daddy." And then your kid says, "I hope he doesn't rob the plane."
Yep, that's right.
And you ask him, which is really fascinating, you say to him, "Well, why would you say that? Would Daddy rob the plane?" And he's like, "No, I don't even know why I thought that. I just that moment, I mean, as a mother and as somebody who studies this, what must have been fascinating for you. What do you think that displayed, I mean, of a 5-year-old child who is black?"
Right. I mean, it really underscores how sort of, all of us are living in this world where we're absorbing, what's out there. We're absorbing what we see, and we're absorbing these associations that are getting made. And so my child, he picked that up, right, from living in the world, from being exposed to everything out there. It affects what's in here, and it affects how you then come to associate a particular group with a particular behavior or trait, but then you don't know exactly when you learn that. So you don't have to, I think people think that, children learn to be racist, say, because they have racist parents who will tell them, that, these people are like this and stay away from them. But you can live in the world and just absorb that by just watching how people behave and just, you don't have to be explicitly told about a group. You can learn that for yourself. And that's what a child's job is to pick up what goes with what, what correlates with what.
Right, pick up what is not said effectively.
Yeah.
Do you think that it helps to have narratives and images and ideas that counteract that? I remember a really beautiful conversation that I watched. It was Muslim actors who were speaking about how the portrayal of Muslims in Hollywood has affected how many people in America and around the world see a brown person who is Muslim. They go, this person is bound to be a terrorist because that's all they see. And they said, we need more roles where Muslim people are just Dan in accounting. So you go like, this person could be anything.
Yes.
But does it help to see images that counter it, or is it more powerful than that?
Well, I mean, I think it does help to see those images, but that's not, the cure, right? So there are studies that have been done by researchers showing that even when, say, African Americans are placed in positive roles and in powerful roles on television, the actors surrounding them can give them sort of negative treatment or negative nonverbals that then people pick up just watching the show. And so you can become, more biased by watching someone treat a black person in a negative way.
So if Michael Costa gives me the stank eye, then people out there could become biased. I'm watching you, Michael. I'm watching you.
Where is he?
Let's talk about companies as well. You do work with corporations as well to try and help them combat bias. Airbnb is one of those. And we know that there were many stories where Airbnb was struggling with people who didn't want to have black people stay in their houses, and how they rented affected it. How do you begin implementing this on a corporate level and then expanding it into the public?
Yeah, so I work with them just informally. They sought me out as a social scientist who does work in this area, and they were having issues with racial profiling basically on the platform, and so so they tried to combat it in multiple ways, and so one was by hiring someone to come in and to kind of talk to people about what their experiences were. by looking at the law to see, what could be done there. They settled on actually having people sign a community pact saying that basically that they wouldn't be biased,
right.
And that they understood what the norms of the platform were to not disqualify someone from staying in your home because of your race.
Right.
So they did all that, and then they also put together a team of people. It's an anti-discrimination team that meets on an ongoing basis, and sometimes I meet with them as well to try to think about ways that will shut it down or at least combat it in some way. Yeah.
Before I let you go, one issue that has been discussed quite intensely has been the issue around artificial intelligence and bias.
Yeah.
We've seen so many stories of like artificial intelligence used in court cases or artificial intelligence used to determine people's threat levels or so on and so forth. But what's been interesting is the realization that computers and AI aren't biased. They are just exposing the bias in the people who program the computers.
Right.
Do you think that that's something that we can fix, and if so, how?
We need to deal with bias, right? So when we don't deal with it, it can just migrate to some other place.
Right.
And so I think we sort of think about AI as doing all these good things and doing a service to us, but in that way they don't always. So I think I'm actually using AI with the policing work now to look at body-worn camera footage, and there it's really helpful because you can look not just at an isolated case where there's a sort of high-profile case try to adjudicate right and wrong. You could actually look across thousands of traffic stops is what we're doing, and look at how those interactions are unfolding and to try to pick up patterns in those interactions, and to see the extent to which drivers who are black versus white are treated differently and so forth. So I feel like there's a huge promise there to the AI, using AI to actually analyze this footage can give us a window into what is really happening on the ground, the blow by blow, as it's unfolding in real time.
Before I let you go, I really had a fun time reading about one particular incident or series rather. It's interesting, so many people will say, oh, bias is not real, or we don't see it, companies, businesses, etc. But there were a group of criminals in Oakland who are very aware of bias. And what they did was really interesting. Could you tell the audience what exactly these criminals did and how they used bias in their favor?
So this was when I got to Oakland, California, and I was starting work with the police department there, and the crime rate was going down, but there were a series of strong-arm robberies that always seemed to happen in Chinatown in Oakland, and they would involve middle-aged Chinese women, so they were snatching their purses from their arms, so this is it's really stymied. The police officers, they couldn't figure out how to catch the robbers, because when they would round people up and say, "Is this the person?" the middle-aged Chinese women couldn't tell you.
Right.
And when they asked the robbers, well, why are you going there? Why are you going to Chinatown? And they said, because they can't tell the brothers apart.
That is one of the most horrible, fantastic stories ever. And the book is full of them. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. Wonderful having you. Bias is available now. Dr. Jennifer Eberhardt, everybody.
You're watching Detroit's own WHPR TV. Detroit Live.
Hi, this is Colette Ramsey. You can watch me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the WHPR TV Now app. Download our free app at WHPR TV Now.
Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern.
Right here on TV 33, we're so proud to announce on Wednesday, 7 a.m. on our conversation. We're going to address everything from medicinal, recreational, legislation, finance, edibles, and more. No more are we going to be in a space where we are not being counted to make the industry work for us. We're now in a space where this billion-dollar industry is taking the world by storm. But you wouldn't know what to do with that if you didn't have enough information. I'm ready to give it to you. So excited about the conversation. On Wednesday, 10 a.m. right here on TV 33, we're going to have that conversation about it. And I promise you, as y'all will see, you will be educated, enlightened, and empowered.
WHPR TV is now on Channel 90. Check out all of your favorite morning talk shows on Comcast Channel 90 every day from 7 a.m. to 12 noon, and watch us anytime, day or night, on all of your favorite devices. Download the WHPR TV Now app and take us with you wherever you go. WHPR TV is now on Comcast Channel 90 every day from 7 a.m. till noon. WHPR TV, a Watkins Broadcasting Company. WHPR TV is now on Channel 90. Check out all of your favorite morning talk shows on Comcast Channel 90 every day from 7 a.m. to 12 noon, and watch us anytime, day or night, on all of your favorite devices. Download the WHPR TV Now app and take us with you wherever you go. WHPR TV is now on Comcast Channel 90 every day from 7 a.m. till noon. WHPR TV, a Watkins Broadcasting Company. Watch WHPR and TV 33 when you want, where you want, how you want. WHPR is now in your pocket. Download our free app by going to the App Store or Google Play and enter WHPR TV in the search engine. And there we are. You can download WHPR TV or radio. You heard about it. Now come be a part of it. Roku, Detroit, worldwide. Approximately 8 million viewers.